Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are currently located. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment here, so hang tight for just another minute, and we will go ahead and get started. Thank you. Okay, again, good afternoon. My name is Casey Murphy, and I'm ACT's Events and Programs Manager. I want to thank you for joining us today for our final webinar event for 2018 with the webinar entitled Innovation and New Frontiers, How Real-Time Information Enables Behavior Change. Our presenters this afternoon will be Matt Caywood, CEO of TransitScreen, Tom Harrington, Commute Solutions Leader for Intuit, and Lydia Shackelford for Senior Associate at Wells & Associates. Before we hear from our presenters this afternoon, I wanted to quickly take care of a few housekeeping items. First, all attendees are on mute during this webinar. If you have a question or if you have a problem hearing us, please hit the question mark sign to the left of your name and type in your question. During the presentation, I will do my best to answer all questions as we go along. For questions regarding any of the presentations, please feel free to type in your question in the question mark sign as we go, and we'll make sure to get it answered at the end. We will be doing a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session at the end, so all questions will be answered at that point. When typing in a question, please also identify who the question is for when typing it in, so we can make sure that question is addressed to the appropriate person. Finally, this session is being recorded, and I will have the recording up on the ACT website within 24 hours after the presentation ends. Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce to you David Strauss, ACT Executive Director, to give an update on what ACT has going on.
Excellent. Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone across the country. As ACT's Executive Director, it's my pleasure to introduce this month's webinar. ACT is the premier transportation demand management organization in the United States. We strive to build a strong community of professionals working to advance and implement TDM at their work sites and within their communities. This month's webinar is a unique offering featuring the importance of information in successful TDM, and it's great to see nearly 300 people registered for today's call. As the leading advocate for TDM, ACT strives to get the most out of our existing transportation system while improving the lives of commuters, increasing the livability of communities, and stimulating economic activity as we look to create a better journey for everyone. So today's webinar really resonates well within these goals. For those of you that are members of ACT, and we're just going to put up a quick poll here to see what our split is, we greatly appreciate your support and look forward to your continued involvement. For those of you who are not members, let me invite you to join ACT in our community of over 1,000 TDM professionals that represent major employers, government agencies, and service providers and consultants. Let's go ahead and close the poll and see where we were at on the split. Excellent. So good chunk members, another healthy chunk not members out there. It's always nice to see the not members, much less than the members. We offer throughout the year many great opportunities for professional development, networking, and advocacy, and have an exciting year of programming coming up in 2019. In addition to our webinars, including our Emerging Mobility Summit in Austin, April 16th, 17th, our international conference in New York City next August, and our TDM Forum next November. And I hope to see you at one of these upcoming events or have you back again on one of our monthly webinars. So today's webinar, Innovation and New Frontiers, How Real-Time Information Enables Behavior Change, is bringing focus to one of the largest barriers to influencing change in commuting habits, information. As the mobility landscape grows and changes, it's more important than ever to have real-time information about all the options available in order to push people to more sustainable means of transportation. Today, we'll hear from individuals who are helping lead the way, provide greater access to information to the public and to their employees. First, we have Matt Caywood, who is CEO and co-founder of Washington, D.C.-based TransitScreen. Matt has a PhD in neuroscience from the University of California, San Francisco, and degrees in neuroscience and computer science from Cambridge and Harvard. Not our most typical path into the TDM world, but an exciting one. Matt is a frequent speaker on open data, sustainability, transportation, and neuroscience, including at Harvard, MIT, Northwestern University, the World Bank, Dubai RTA, Consumer Electronics Show, Transportation Research Board, and just last month, ACT's TDM Forum in Nashville. Please join me in welcoming Matt Caywood.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, David. Appreciate the introduction. And very pleased to be talking to the ACT audience again after a really great Nashville conference. I think what we're trying to accomplish today is a couple things. One is, obviously I have a background that relates to neuroscience and psychology and some of the theory, behind behavior and behavior change and how real-time information can affect that. That's something we think about a lot at TransitScreen. But I really want to make sure that in the context of today's webinar and the great speakers that we have and Lydia and Tom, that we're also able to tie to practice in as many ways as possible. Please don't hesitate to sort of ask questions about any of that, and really love to if by the end of this webinar we can kind of get down to the brass tacks and not just stay at the level of the theoretical. Just to begin. The topic today is real-time information, how that relates to behavior change. And there are a number of different ways in which that works. The opening slide here is just meant to evoke one kind of very simple real-time information that everyone's very familiar with, the sign that tells you whether you can cross the street or not. But it also serves another purpose. And in the context of TDM, I'd like to highlight that a walk sign that says walk is in its own small way promoting walkability, and that you should and could be walking in this neighborhood. So I think one of the themes that really came out of Nashville TDM Forum was the importance for TDM of showing that you can travel and commute by different means than maybe your default option in a single occupancy vehicle. And the effectiveness of showing that and not telling that is something that I'll return to a couple times in this slide deck. So could we advance the slide one there? Here we go. Okay. At the theoretical level, some of you may have heard of some of these books about cognitive biases and just how rampant they are in humans of all kinds, ranging from executives to just regular people and everyday decisions. And the cognitive bias literature is very complicated. There's some great books on it, like Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, and Thaler and Sunstein's book Nudge. A couple of the ones that really crossed over into popularity in the last few years. This diagram shows all of the different cognitive biases that people have found in psychological experiments and tries to classify them on an ongoing way. It's kind of a neat thematic way. But really, if you kind of get down to it, the simple and probably overgeneralization about how people are biased in their day-to-day choices and the kinds of mistakes people make because of the limitations of our brain and our a body come down to a couple things. The first one is really can you click on that one, please?
Do you need me to advance it, Matt?
Yeah, I can't. Okay, there it goes. Sorry, it just went way ahead.
Here, we can get back for you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
just right there. They're basically two cognitive biases. One is, and you know, these are meant to be a little bit whimsical rather than accusatory. One of them is laziness, right? And it's kind of boils down to getting informed about things has a cost, right? You know, ideally in some world we'd all be fully rational and know that there is to know about everything we're making a decision about, but realistically, everyone's got other priorities, everyone's got trade-offs, everyone is you know, busy, and our attention is divided. So there's a cost that comes to getting informed, and you know, I think we all know how that affects people's decision making as it relates to their commute or their transportation. You know, really, you know, if it says even as simple as, you know, I don't even know if there's a bus that goes to my workplace, or you know, what is this this scooter or this bike share? I don't know how to sign up. All of this acts as an activation barrier to using more sustainable modes of transportation than the one you're already probably familiar with. The second kind of generalized bias is something called generally called stickiness, and this is the fact that you know, because we're all human, the way we grow to understand the world is historical, and it's conditioned on our experiences and the way we grow up and what we see around us, and you know, what we see most commonly around us. So if you look out onto a street and you see mostly cars and you don't see very many bikes, then you can you know, be fooled into thinking that you know, no one bikes. And that's an example of an overgeneralization that you might make. So really, there's a couple kind of general themes of cognitive bias here, and there's a very deep literature on this, and there's a lot of, I think, interesting ways that it relates in generally to TDM. So let's see. Next slide, please. When I think about TDM and what we're trying to accomplish, I kind of think of it in two ways. Because of my experience. One is in this psychological framework, and the other is in the sales framework, because what we do on TransitScreen on an everyday basis is we try to go out and work with organizations like many of yours. And it's interesting to kind of understand that there's a real parallel between these two. I know Lydia is going to talk more about that, because one of the things that her company, Wells and Associates, has developed is a really sophisticated sales-based approach of looking at TDM. But you know, just from a high level, you know, in psychology, if you're trying to you know, to have a you know, to persuade someone or to, you know, to act in a certain way or to change their behavior, the first thing you need is a cue, something that causes them to notice that there's an alternative, or that they can make a choice, or that they can change their behavior. The second thing you need is a reaction. So you need people to change their action, to evaluate their options, and then to act. And then from a sales perspective, it's sometimes called a sales funnel. People need to have generalized awareness, then they form an interest, you know, evaluate their options, and then purchase. And so, you know, TDM framework would look a lot like that. And I'll let Lydia talk about that. Next slide, please. So, you know, one of the big cognitive biases we're dealing with, as I mentioned, is really the existing, pre-existing transportation system dominated by traffic and single occupancy vehicles. And that ties into a few different biases that are called default bias, or status quo bias, or the herd mentality. Basically, you're always safe if you're you know, doing what everyone else is doing. Next slide. One of the things that, as I mentioned, came out of the forum was the idea that you know, TDM is best when it shows and doesn't just tell people to change their behavior. And so that really relates to on the previous funnel slide, the generalized awareness and the cue. The more salient the cue for your behavior change, the more effective you are, and the more likely you are to kind of go down that funnel to possibly making a behavior change. So one of the things people in transit talk about a lot is, you know, why and when heavy rail systems with tracks are more effective than buses or bus rapid transit or things like that. And I think one of the things that comes down to is really the salience. On the bus side, you've got this infrastructure. You've got a big rail that tells you where the bus is going. You've got a station. You might have real-time information at the station. Whereas in the bus, the bus is a little bit fly-by-night. It's kind of mysterious. It comes and goes, and most people just generally don't feel like they know where it is or when it is coming. And so that's one of the things that I think real-time information is absolutely critical to solving, if you don't have that kind of heavy rail investment, or even if you do. So next slide. And especially things like employer shuttles really suffer from a salience problem a lot of the time, because they're really if they're only out there in front of the building a small fraction of the time, then that's makes a big difference to people's generalized awareness of them. Could I have the next slide? Oops.
Do you need me to go back, Matt?
I don't know if I can go back. Let me see. Yes.
Here, I can go back for you. Which slide did you want? This one or next one?
These ones are great. Thanks. So couple other examples of things that really show don't tell. Scooters. The majority of scooter rides aren't initiated from apps. They're initiated from someone stumbling across the scooter on the sidewalk. Hopefully not literally. And then bike lane in the next one here in British Columbia. Great example of something that shows you that this biking is normal, that it's an easy way to get to and from this coffee shop or from your work. Great infrastructure is really an advertisement for itself. So we think of TransitScreen, and our primary product here today is this display that goes in the lobbies of buildings and corporate workplaces and residential buildings, office buildings, hotels, and so on. It's a way of showing that these options, these different multimodal, sustainable transportation options surround you, and you might not even be aware of them when you go out on the street and look at them. But this display here is right by the exit, and it's showing you, hey, there's a metro station 4 minutes away from here, and there's trains coming in 2 and 12 minutes. They're always there for you. And especially with buses, which you can see on the right, or with things like bike share, the real-time information there is an advertisement for all of these options. And importantly, it's a true advertisement, right? In the way that, like, if you just sent someone an email and said, hey, do you know there's bike share? Do you know there's buses you could take? That's one thing, but I think it's a lot less persuasive than if you can actually show people, hey, these things exist. They're here all the time, and we know because we're using, smart city technologies, and they're all being GPS tracked. Like, they are literally outside the building, and you may not see them every time you leave, but they're right there, and they're real options that you can take on a daily basis, and that's really powerful. So we've seen, in some different cases, we've seen behavior changes from just putting that information there, changes in how people spend their time, where people spend their time. I think as we go along, we're also working to kind of look at how this has an effect in people's actual choices about, say, when they move into a building, whether they bring a car or not, or whether they understand, because of this information, that there are sufficient options around them that they don't have to. But this is a very interesting slide here about kind of how to achieve persuasion. And there's a whole deep rabbit hole called persuasive technology that, if you're interested, it's worth checking out. There's a guy from Stanford called B.J. Fogg who about 10 years ago had a Stanford class where he taught this methodology of behavior change, and it gave rise to something like startups with, like, several hundred jobs just by the end of the class, and crazy amounts of venture funding and so on. But the essential insight of he was doing this at the right timing. It was, if anyone remembers Farmville, that was when stuff like that was coming out. So behavior change can be used for not so good purposes as well as good purposes. But the way that he understood, he sort of understood and summarized this is that there are really two factors in people's ability to change. One is motivation, and the other is ability. And so, depending on where you are on this curve, the left axis here, the vertical axis is motivation. So if your motivation to change is high, then you don't need that much of a kick to actually change. If your ability but if it's a hard thing to do, then you might, like this red line here, find yourself being prompted to change, saying, oh, maybe I should try a different mode of transportation, but it's really too hard where I work. So even though I'm motivated because I want to be green, I'm not going to succeed at making that change. Whereas if you can make it easier to do by moving along the axis to the right, then you can successfully get across that green action line with a prompt. And so, a lot of the stuff that he did was really, and his classes did, was more aligned with kind of simple behavior changes. But even long-term ones like, changing your financial behavior and financial outcomes, saving more, these things can all succeed in kind of a behavioral change persuasive technology framework. And so this is one of the other things that we really look at. And, real-time information is one of the tools that you need to help kind of create that behavioral prompt. But obviously you also need to make it easy, and you need to help get people motivated. And the second thing really that I think is important as a kind of theoretical model for TDM practitioners is that what we're trying to establish here is not just a simple one-off behavior change, not just try my app or play Farmville, but actually make a sustained change and really make a new default behavior. So change your default behavior, possibly from driving yourself in a car to sharing the road with someone else in a carpool or a van pool or bus or biking to work. And there's some different models for that. This is a very popular one, which is called the stages of change model. It comes from sort of therapy and from sort of addiction recovery and things like that, and really about changing these persistent, sometimes very hard to change action patterns. And I think this is probably on the more difficult side. The other model, the fog behavior model, is maybe a little too simplistic, and that assumes you can change things instantly. This kind of is meant to deal with very intractable problems. But the thing that it really emphasizes that we need to think about is the maintenance phase. So that someone's taken an action, someone's tried something different, but then you want to sustain them in this kind of maintenance phase. And as the asterisk notes there, relapse is always possible, and that's something that we have to bear in mind. So I do think real-time information helps play a role in preventing relapse when someone is changing their behavior. And this is, I'll just kind of quickly explain why. One of the worst experiences you can have in trying to use public transit or some other shared form of transportation is unreliability. So if you miss your bus by 1 minute and then you're late to a meeting by 5 minutes, that's a terrible experience and it really stresses you out. If you're 1 minute early, then you're right on time and everything's very smooth. So there's this kind of asymmetry. 1 minute before is very different outcome from 1 minute too late, as Santa here found out as he's chasing the New York City bus down the street. And so real-time information can really help you plan for that and really plan for kind of nailing your bus, especially when you have things that have very long headways, things that don't run frequently, like employer shuttles. We're missing one of those can be a very negative impact and really stress you out. That's the kind of thing that will create relapses, where people will say, I'm stressed, I just want to go back to the way I was doing it before. And similarly, I think people, guaranteed ride home is a very well-established model, but I think the reason it works, and it's important, especially when it's app-enabled and easy to use, is because it can deal with those situations when something went wrong, and otherwise you get very, very stressed out about it, and possibly relapse. But this can actually help you by giving you an insurance policy that helps you kind of retain your ability to commit to more sustainable transportation. That's my theory of TDM-enabled behavior change and real-time information. And I'll turn it back over to Casey and David for the next presenter.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Next, I'm going to introduce Lydia Shackelford. As a member of the Transportation Demand Management team at Wells & Associates, Lydia develops and manages many successful and award-winning TDM programs throughout the country and specializes in creating and sustaining true behavior change. Lydia works with communities on an individual level to identify goals and then uses best practices, research, and data to develop tailored TDM programs, strategies, and campaigns to meet those goals. As a marketing outreach professional, Lydia works with strategic messaging, social media, content development, program management, data collection, and program monitoring and evaluation. Lydia has a bachelor's degree in public relations from George Mason University and was named one of ACT's 40 Under 40 recipients in 2018. Please join me in welcoming Lydia Shackelford.
Thank you. I hope you all can hear me okay. Thank you, David, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'd like to join my colleagues in thanking you for joining us today. So as David mentioned here at Wells & Associates, our TDM team works really hard to use in-depth data and real-time information as much as possible to really make a difference in the transportation and travel world. We're headquartered in Tysons, Virginia, which for those who may not be familiar is just outside of DC and is one of the fastest growing edge cities in the US. Because of this growth and the rapid growth of this area, the congestion makes for a very frustrating commute for many people, me included. And Wells is here to be a part of that solution for these for the travel woes. So today I'd like to tell you all a little bit about our approach to behavior change using real-time information and our data management and marketing automation platform. We built this platform, we call it Compass, in conjunction with our partners at One Commute to help develop and implement true behavior change programs aimed at finding solutions for people at a very individual level and helping them change their travel behavior and way of life. And then also, as Matt mentioned, really sustaining that change to help create overall better communities and better ways of life. So at Wells, we use personalized marketing and marketing automation as a base for all of our TDM programs. We understand that no two programs, audiences of those programs, or individual commuters are the same. So we really try to communicate with them with this understanding that everyone's an individual, and even if you are all living in the same building or working in the same location, you're not all one of the herd, as Matt mentioned. Our personalized marketing approach uses these 4 principles that you see here, which are critical to a successful marketing program across the world, not just within TDM. We believe that you have to have all of these, including the ease of access to information. Excuse me. So sorry. The ease of access of information, which means that we are able to look at any individual commuter, understand their needs, and then tailor a message around that. And then this level of access allows us to work efficiently and know that our messages are being communicated efficiently as well. It's also key for all of this information and data to be held in a very centralized and organized location. A lot of data that goes into building messages and outreach campaigns for any form of marketing, but especially those that are focused on behavior change. It's a lot of data and a lot of information, so all of that has to be organized in order for us to be able to use it efficiently and effectively to create change. Finally, having clear reporting and data analytics is key. Being able to see how effective our communications and strategies are through various reports definitely helps us understand what's working well, what might need some fine-tuning. As Matt mentioned before, to help guide our process to travel behavior change, we created a personalized marketing and behavior change funnel. It's definitely very similar to a conversion funnel that you might have seen in previous marketing materials, or if you're a marketing professional and have some background in this. But this funnel includes many of those same notions of a marketing and sales funnel, but it also includes an inverted funnel, so it's more of an hourglass really, which focuses on the sustaining change behavior that we talked about and creating a new norm. So in order to create this funnel, we had to take a lot of time to really understand what goes into changing travel behavior. As you know, it takes effort, persistence, and consistency to truly interact and engage in a dialogue with an individual. It's not just handing someone a transit pass and saying, here's where the closest bus stop is. It's a much longer process than that. As you can see, the conversion funnel starts at a place of awareness and brings people through interest, desire, action, and then eventually to that actual desired action of behavior change. And then from there, we look to make people regular users and then hopefully advocates of that mode or of that behavior. And then finally, a leader, having people bring the others with them and show them that this can be a new way of life. On the left side of the funnel, you can see that we use a lot of automation toward the top, where it allows us to segment our audiences and find out exactly who we should bring through the journey. And then on the right, you can see that we use more and more personalization as we communicate with our audiences. So the efficiencies that we might build in with the automation in the top half allows for the more time and effort to be spent on the personalized needs that have to occur on the bottom half in order to really create and sustain behavior change. So this is something that we definitely see as a differentiator in the world of behavior change as it associates with transportation demand management and TDM in general. We have taken true marketing principles, brought them into the TDM field, dissected what is needed into changing travel behavior, broken it up into these sections, and then this is really what we built Compass off of, our platform that we use. We use this funnel and the premise of true behavior change. So a little background on what Compass is, since I keep mentioning it. It's a marketing automation platform, and I want to show you guys today how Compass really helps us achieve our travel behavior goals and supports the funnel that I just showed you. So first, I think it's important to understand the tools and the team we have in place that make it up. So first and foremost, we partnered with OneCommute to design and build Compass. They help support us on the technology side of things and help us drive better commuter decisions. And then we also designed Compass around using the use of Salesforce and Pardot. So we took the marketing automation tool in Pardot and combined it with our data management tool, that's Salesforce. And then the main factor in designing Compass was also our data-driven process. So as we get into the next few slides, you'll see how the platform and our approach is not random at all, but rather driven by as much data and real-time information as possible. So as I mentioned, the secret sauce to Compass is truly data, data, data. And the secret sauce to any behavior change, in my opinion, is certainly data, data, data. Our entire platform and our entire process is built around individual information, filtering and segmenting people based on the various types of information we receive, and then customizing all communications based on that information. So all the information has to come from somewhere. So we can bring data in from all different kinds of places, and that helps us segment and create communications from all the different data sources that you can see here. So, you know, whether we pull from interactions we have at events or phone inquiries that people might call and ask us about, or someone connecting to us through the website, social media, our surveys are a big piece of data that we pull. But all of that we pull into each individual person's what we call a commuter profile, and we really create an individual profile for everybody based off of their interactions. So as I mentioned, once someone provides us with any kind of data about themselves as an individual, then they're entered into Compass and they receive a commuter profile. So whether they took one of the surveys, attended an event, or anything like that, you can kind of see that's the first checkbox that you see at the beginning of this cycle, rather. They come in, the information is provided, it's uploaded into Compass, and then a commuter profile is born. And then from there, with the information we have from a survey response, for instance, we're able to geolocate a home and work address for them. And then from there, we're able to take their commuter profile through our secret sauce of algorithms, and we create and narrow down which modes of transportation are not just available to this person, but are actual potential solutions. So for instance, we would never match somebody with taking transit to work if they're firmly in the no transit camp. It might be the best match for them based off of like geolocation, but we continue to dig a little deeper with them and find out if they have absolutely no interest in it. And if they have no interest in it and they're very firm on that, we know that they're simply not going to do it. So then we'll move to a different mode altogether and work with them through that journey instead. So once their mode choice or funnel creation, as we call it, has been determined, we then enter them into that specific funnel. And then the funnel I showed you earlier is just a single example of multiple funnels that we have running at once. After they've been segmented, we then create dynamic lists of everyone we have, of all the audiences and all of our programs and everyone that could potentially be within these funnels. And then that's when really people start going on what we call our personalized commuter journeys. And we start bringing them from that higher part of those funnels all the way down to that piece of behavior change, and then hopefully helping use them to widen the bottom part of the funnel, create regular users, more advocates and leaders in this world, and hopefully creating a new norm. And then what would our platform be without any kind of understanding of this actually working? So while people are flowing through these journeys and receiving real-time updates, we too are receiving real-time information and reports about how things are progressing. So I talked a lot about the individual journeys just now, so I'm going to give you a quick snapshot of what that kind of looks like within our platform. So all of our personalized connections run through what we call marketing journeys. As I mentioned, if someone is currently driving alone but has shown some kind of interest in taking a different mode to work, then they're at a very different place in any kind of funnel, but especially in our conversion funnels, than someone who might be taking transit occasionally to work, or even then, if someone is taking transit every single day and transit alone, they're at a very different place in our funnel than the person who takes it occasionally. So I guess imagine these flowing through these journeys as like water flowing downstream. So the flow and the process of how each person might move through the funnel and downstream depends on the types of marketing and communications and events that they might receive and attend and how they interact with them. So depending on all of that is really dependent on how they might flow through one of these journeys. So depending on like what link you might click in an email, one person might flow down a faster side of the journey than someone who needs a little bit more coaching and more convincing. So this is a very small snapshot of one of the many journeys that we have. Of all of our journeys, I think there's like hundreds and hundreds of different touch points and directions that a single person could go, depending on individual behavior and interactions. So once we've decided where people are within these funnels, we start to create individual marketing campaigns and journeys. So this snapshot here is an example of a portion of a marketing campaign that we have for somebody who's interested in using another mode of transportation, but they're not currently using it at all. So they're either driving alone and they have both interest and the ability to do so, but we still have to teach them about it, hold their hand through it, and all that stuff. So as you can see in just even this little small snapshot, there's various branches people could go through. The way they interact with one communication guides them to the next step, and so on and so on. No two journeys are alike. It's very rare that someone will open up an email from us at the exact same time as the exact same, or at the exact same time as somebody else, and then click on the exact same link or respond to an inquiry with the exact same response. So that's why there's so many different branches that someone could potentially travel through for a behavior change journey. Another thing I've mentioned is a commuter profile. So each of our profiles really include a lot of different items that tell us something very important about people, and it helps us to decide how to communicate with them. They're dynamic and they update in real time based on the information and communications that we have with each individual. So these types of updates can come from either someone's interactions with the various marketing strategies, or it can come from updates that they might provide us through another data source. So how they interact with like an email will provide us with different information than, you know, if someone were to take a survey of ours and provides us with information there. One of the number one data sources that we do currently have feeding our platform and all of our behavior change journeys is our survey tool. So we use Survey Gizmo because it interacts directly with Salesforce, which is our data platform that feeds into Compass. And we use this in a very real time, really, it's all very real time. So we use it to, survey gives administers the survey. There's a lot of push and pull happening from both platforms, and they communicate back and forth with each other. And it ends up providing a very tailored survey for each participant. So as each participant takes our survey, they're going to receive a series of questions that are based on how they might answer one question or another. So someone who lives in Loudoun County or someone who lives downtown in DC is going to have a very different survey experience. Someone who takes Metro all the time, or somebody who might walk to work, or someone who drives alone, they're all going to have very different survey experiences. So yeah, no one survey is the same, since every single survey participant is very different, just like every person that we talk to is very different. Additionally, survey participants are scored in real time, so it's based on their answers and the actual feasibility of certain modes that they might be taking currently, or if they're driving alone, if they actually have the ability to take a different mode. We then score them into the best behavior change funnel that we've been talking about for their particular commute. So even though it's a very intricate and complex interaction occurring on the back end of the process, all survey participants are met with a very clean and user-friendly interface for their survey experience. Aside from our survey process, another way we receive data from, or for our commuter profiles and from all the people that we interact with, is at events. At a lot of our events, we often incentivize people to come and chat with us, sign up for our communication, which helps build our commuter profile database. However, we also subscribe to a tactic called motivational interviewing, where we open conversations with people and learn about them, but in a much more casual setting. So we really try to connect with people, learn about what makes them tick, and then we can note all of that in their commuter profile and help them and see how it kind of adjusts their status in one of our behavior change funnels. And then finally, the last part I wanted to showcase for you guys is the dashboard and reporting mechanisms that we have. So we believe being able to see data up front and watch it change in real time helps us understand how our programs are working and whether or not we're really making a difference in the realm of behavior change. So as I mentioned, our dashboards update in real time. They provide snapshots into the various data that we have. We can see trends of mode usage, event attendance, survey responses, things like that. The most important thing that we wanted to make sure we could see in our dashboards was whether or not our programs were actually achieving the goals that we set of truly changing travel behavior. And our reports are able to provide that very clearly and succinctly. We also have the ability to drill down a little deeper. So instead of looking at an entire campaign or an entire funnel in and of itself, we can drill down into a particular email or into an event and communication and see the outcomes that we have from that. So that's a quick overview of the marketing and automation and real-time behavior change process that we use at Wells to create and hopefully sustain true behavior change. As Matt discussed, travel behavior change is really not much different than any other lifestyle change. People need a lot of information from a lot of different places, even think about making a decision to try something new even one time. And then from there, being able to help them through their journey into a new lifestyle really requires a lot of information as well. So being able to track this information in real time on an individual basis is incredibly important and definitely a necessary aspect of behavior change that, you know, it can tend to be overlooked. So that's what I have for you guys today. I'll pass it back over to David and Casey, and we can continue on with Tom.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lydia. Our final speaker this afternoon is Tom Harrington. He's the Global Commute Solutions Leader in Intuit's workplace organization. In growing globally, Intuit recognizes the responsibility to provide responsible commute alternatives for workers. Tom manages these programs in the Americas, Europe, and Asia, and is chair of the Mountain View Transit Management Association, MVGO. Tom is an active member of the Northern California chapter of the Association for Commuter Transportation and a periodic speaker on our webinars and conferences. Please join me in welcoming Tom Harrington.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for taking your time this afternoon. My goal here is to provide at least one piece of information from what I'm sharing with you that you could take back and apply yourselves. I know in actually doing the work here in preparing the deck, I actually had some learnings myself. Intuit, I'm going to read ahead because the deck is catching up to me here. I'm going to read ahead with some of the things I know. Intuit is based on a mission around creating prosperity around the world. And in doing so, we do that for our customers, for end consumers, small business, and the self-employed. And Casey, I hate to say this, but I've tried page down, I've tried space, I've tried arrow down. It's just not moving for me.
No problem, sir. I got your back. Here you go.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So this is the slide I just went through. If you want to go on to the next one. Intuit has been in the business for about 35 years. We are about a $6 billion company with 8,500 employees, 50 million customers, and one of the biggest things about making the Intuit engine go is our core values. And you see those at the bottom of the screen here, and they're really built into every business process and decision that we actually have. Casey, if you want to go on the next one, talks a little bit about our locations. What you'll see here is that we have 17 locations in 8 different countries. I actually deliver the transit solution in 16 of those locations in 7 different countries. Only India do I not deliver the solution for. If you want to go on to the next one, Casey. Here's where we start getting into some of the details here. And Casey, if you want to build this once, how does my program here relate to real-time information? Go ahead and hit once, and you'll see it'll change to real-time influences. Hit one more time, and it'll show what programs actually are using those real-time influences during the day. So as you can see, we've got our shuttle programs, Caltrain schedules, EV charging, ride matching that we have, car shares here at the Mountain View campus, our guaranteed ride home program across the U.S., and then of course there's some things that we do with our transit subsidies as well as through the Mountain View Transportation Management Association. All right, Casey, if you want to go on the next one, this one I'll spend a little time on. So what does real-time information look like? To me, it looks like a couple of different things. It could be tweets or emails. You'll see some that we've gotten here from Caltrain, from the ACE train, from Harbor Ferries in San Francisco, or it could be some things that come to the end user. For instance, on the left-hand side here, you'll see a charge point message that is telling an EV driver that their turn to charge their vehicle at the station is ready to go, and it's a notification to let them know that they're up. In terms of managing our EVs, I have quite a few of them that I manage across the U.S. Logging into the portal is a quick and easy way for me to see what the health is of my EV chargers and whether or not they're actually being used at the present time. When you look over at this, you see the green arrows are available, the blue the blue circles are in use. The black one is a problem. We've got a problem with one of those stations there in San Diego. Some really powerful reporting that comes out of the ChargePoint portal. Casey, if you want to go on the next one. Okay, so what does it look like on our shuttle programs? For the rider, this is a phone screenshot for the rider. And what it shows is it shows where the stops are, what the times are for the stops, and it actually shows a depiction of where the vehicle is along the way. This happens to be one of our San Francisco routes that's on its way coming down. One of the things that I thought of that morning was I sat there and said, as I pulled down this screenshot, I said, you know, I can actually pull up and tell who actually is on that vehicle on the way down. And what I did in the background is I actually went into the RidePal portal, RidePal Bowers portal, and I actually pulled that up for that route. So I was actually able to see how many folks I had on board and essentially where they were at the time. Casey, you want to go on the next one? Okay, I'm going to take it a little slower now because I really only have like 2 more slides to go through here. You know, Matt was on and telling us about TransitScreen, and I'm a firm believer in the TransitScreen product. This is what the screen looks like in my campus center here in Mountain View. It's got our long-haul shuttles, the RidePal shuttles on the left-hand side of the screen. It's got some of our ACE buses, the ACE trains that are located here, and when those are scheduled to go, we've got a robust schedule here on connectors to the ACE train. That 824 is actually the connection that gets from the Mountain View campus via VTA and a free shuttle down to the ACE station. And then, of course, you could see our Caltrain schedules in here. 2 things I want to talk about on this that I haven't yet that are really interesting. The Guaranteed Ride Home is a really important program here at Intuit, and most of our Guaranteed Rides Home are provided via Lyft Dispatch. We not only put up the Lyft schedule and how far away they are here on our TransitScreen product for how long it's going to take before you're able to get a car, but we also want to remind people that that Guaranteed Ride Home is there for them too as well if they need it. This is one of the ways we go about and do that. The second thing is you may wonder, if I'm pushing commute, why do I have transit times up here for travel for folks? Well, the biggest reason is I often have people come in and say, you know, it took me an hour to get to Lake Merritt and BART yesterday on the bus. And this enables me to actually pull up at a similar time of day and say, oh, well, how long would it be in your vehicle driving by yourself in a single occupant vehicle? And I'm able to show the driving times. And as it turns out, those times are pretty normalized. It's not so much that the buses are taking longer. If anything, they're actually taking shorter because we have a lot of high occupancy vehicle lanes here in the Bay Area. But it's a way for me to actually have that information and share that back with our end users. Casey, if you want to go on the next one. All right, this is my next to last slide, and it really talks about how I use this information and how things have changed. When you look at buses and you look at shuttles, what you're really seeing here is you're seeing real-time tracking that the end user can use, which puts trust in the system. It also gives them more productivity because they're able to stay at their desk longer before they actually leave to jump on the bus to get on in the afternoon. There's robust communication that comes through in the form of tweets and texts to alert riders to issues. We also use a Slack messaging board here in the background too as well. The real-time rider info opens up direct communications between myself and the riders, as well as our partners and the riders as well. And then really the bottom line here that we're looking at is an informed rider is a much more likely rider. When we start looking at EV charging, the controlled access, the station help, being able to actually get more supply out of our charging stations than we actually should be able to by using the waitlist product. A great way that we're actually able to stretch our EV charging supply here. The notices go out automatically. It's notices when it's your turn. It's notices when charging is done. Again, for EVs, it means more productivity, more time at work, and a lesser capital investment on my part as well. And then finally, when you look over on the other side, these are a couple of different methods that I use. All in all, you look at each one of these, what they actually do is they actually deliver a better customer experience. And Casey, that's my next slide is my last slide with my contact information. If anybody has any questions, I'll hand it back over to David and Casey, and really thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Tom. And I forgot to mention during your introduction that Intuit was the recipient of 2018 TDM Excellence Award for an employer. So congratulations on that again. I'm going to turn it over to Casey to take a few questions up until the top of the hour.
Thank you, David. We have about 6 minutes here. We have some questions here for our panelists, and I'm going to go ahead and try to get as many as we can get answered here right now. First, I'm going to start with Matt. Matt, if the public transit service isn't extremely reliable already, then how valuable are transit screens and other real-time trackers? How do you know they won't anger people even further?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, this is the difference between really, schedules, which I think we can all agree are obsolete, and real-time information. Real-time information means that someone is out there tracking the vehicles and making sure through estimates and the best technology available how many minutes away they are from a particular stop. And obviously, we don't track them all ourselves at TransitScreen. We rely on our partners, people like Swiftly and some of the other companies that are tracking these kinds of vehicles. And the state of the technology is getting a lot better. But I think that the bottom line is, people need that information. They're going to get it one way or the other. And if you want them to have a good experience where they commute, you have to give them the best information possible. And that means providing them with real-time information. And, I think the agencies, transit agencies, used to have that fear as well, that people would blame them. And, the research shows that actually that's not the case. I think it's really the unpredictability and just that, feeling when you're at the bus stop and you have no idea whether a bus is going to arrive or not. That's what really turns riders off, and not minor errors in the real-time information that are being driven out of the system on an ongoing basis.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And just because we did get asked a couple questions, we are recording this session and it will be live on the ACT website by tomorrow afternoon. So this session is being recorded for those of you who had asked. I'll go now, switch to Lydia here real quickly. And Lydia, someone had a question here. What agencies are currently using Compass, and are you working with any MPOs or just private businesses?
Yeah, so we mainly work with private developers, property managers, and private organizations, but it's not to say that we wouldn't extend Compass or the use of Compass and partner with folks as well. We are in the process of chatting with a few folks. Nothing's finalized, so I don't necessarily feel comfortable mentioning the ones that we are working with, but if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. I think my contact information was shared with like the slides that were sent ahead of time, and they'll be when you guys send this out. But I'd be happy to answer maybe more like one-on-one questions that you guys might have from like a agency side of things.
Okay, thank you. Yes, all the presenters' contact details will be posted with the recording on our website. So if you want to ask Lydia any further questions on that, you certainly can. Tom, I think this one is for you, but certainly anyone could chime in with this. How do you leverage utilization of public transportation data with the example of Caltrain and Go Passes to appropriately allocate transit benefits?
Wow, I really wish we had that data so that we could do that. But at the same time, I'm not really a big fan on how it's collected for Caltrain either if you've got a Go Pass, and that's something we use. For the audience, I'm going to explain a little bit about how the system works. On Caltrain, one of the things you could do is, as an organization here in the Bay Area, it's the commuter rail for us. You can opt to do a annual pass each calendar year if you buy that for each and every one of your employees at a discounted rate that is good anywhere on the train as it goes through. There are two methods to actually use that. One is you just put a sticker on a badge, and as people come by to check and see if you're there, you show them the badge. The other method is one that's being piloted right now by, I think it's 40% of the Go Pass users, and that's one that uses a clipper card system where there's a machine that you tag on and you tag off as you go through. Clipper is a great system, works very well on public transit. On Caltrain, though, we have open platforms, and the card readers are actually based in the station. Because of that, it's a little bit onerous on our riders to actually go in and tag on and tag off each time if they've got an annual pass. So we really do prefer the fact that they've got an annual pass that they could just show. In terms of how that data is collected, if you're not tagging on, you're not collecting that information. So how do I get that information? Actually, we mentioned that MVGO, Transportation Management Association, they run our last mile shuttles, which go to the train station where Caltrain actually meets us and comes to the campus. What I use is I actually use the boarding and the disembarks that we have from stops on the Intuit campus on those shuttles to give an indicator of where we're at. So I'm missing out on bicyclists, to be honest with you, since it's close to about 3 miles away, but I am catching most of the folks that are actually taking a shuttle. So that's how I'm actually collecting the information and using that to market to individuals.
Okay, we'll just take one more here as we head to the top of the hour. And again, if we did not finish answering your question, please feel free to reach out to the panelists here after the event, and they'll be more than happy to answer your question. Lydia, real quickly, you know, with all the research and the data and the marketing that you showed us and how you're reaching out to folks and hitting certain touch points, what is your ultimate conversion rate in getting someone to convert from their standalone car to another mode of transportation?
Sure. So I can actually pull those numbers. I don't have them in front of me for everyone that we have in Compass. We have thousands of commuter profiles in Compass, but across the board, all of our programs do have what we call trip reduction goals and mode split goals, and they're all meeting those goals, if not exceeding them. Most are actually exceeding them quite a bit. So I think it's a combination of both the Compass and then the individual, individual marketing techniques that we use. And also, sometimes it's just location. Some of our more transit-oriented developments have much higher goals for their trip reductions and mode split. But at the end of the day, it is a little bit easier to convince people who are right there, right, to get on the train. So I'm happy to share information. Again, it's a lot because there's a lot of folks that are in Compass. I wish I could pull up my actual dashboard right now. But it would be mode by mode and funnel by funnel, and we could go over it and chat with you guys in more detail for sure. And then I could also go over just like individual programs or locations in which we work, and we can kind of go through the data that way as well.
Excellent. It sounds like a whole nother webinar right there in itself, Lydia.
Sure.
Well, I want to thank all of our panelists today. It was an excellent presentation, and we hope that all of you enjoyed it. And again, if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to the panelists, and I will have this recording posted within the next 24 hours on the ACT website. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today, and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
You as well.
Bye.